Good morning, everyone. We'll get started here shortly. We have about another minute or so. Okay, I'm live. Okay, I'm live. Yeah, I'm on the screen. I'm just worried about my content. Okay, I'll give it a try. Thanks. All right, it is 8:30 on Tuesday. This morning, we are sharing the results of last spring. I know it's been quite a delay, but we just want to make sure we share those once you're all back in school. I'm Laura Vermilya, CFO here at OHSAA, and I'll be presenting the results of last spring. We record this session and it will be posted on our YouTube channel. In addition, at the end of every season, we will do a similar presentation. So in January, we typically present the fall season, and in April or May, we present the winter season, and then usually in September, we do the spring season. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen here. Can you see that, Greg?
The video is lagging by about 20 seconds.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So as I mentioned, this is the spring 2024 results. In spring, we have here just a reminder how this slide works. There's the sports down the side, and then we have a column for attendance, our ticket revenues, other revenues, our total expenses by each of these sports, and then how the profit or loss for each sport. I think you'll find that by sport, these are probably very typical to your athletic department. So we're going to start out with attendance. Overall attendance was 404,682. This is down about 7% from last year. That's actually a pretty big decline based on what we've been seeing the last 3 or 4 years. We've seen attendance anywhere from up 1% or 2, flat, or down 1% or 2. So down 7 is like I said, our largest decline, and it mainly came in the sports of baseball and softball. Both those sports attendance was down around 12-13% across the board, both at district and regional levels. At state level, we were actually very similar to last year. Lacrosse continues to be a growing sport as far as fan attendance. Lacrosse attendance was up about 5% to last year. Track and field down slightly, and then boys volleyball, also a new sport for us. This was the second year for that sport in the spring, and attendance was up about 2%. The revenues, these are ticket revenues. Again, baseball, almost $1 million, 950,000. Again, this is all levels, sectional, district, regional, and state. Softball 583, boys tennis around 40,000, lacrosse 611, track and field obviously the highest attendance sport with the most participants, over $1 million, and then boys volleyball 100. Other revenues are typically things like entry fees, program sales, and radio and TV rights. And then total expenses. Baseball, 900,000, softball, 834, boys tennis, 86, lacrosse, 439, track and field, $1.4 million in expenses, and boys volleyball, 151. So, profitability wise, baseball was profitable at 43,000. Again, this is all levels, sectional, district, regional, and state. Softball was a loss of 238,000. Actually, it lost more than any other sport this year, in spring. Boys tennis, 45,000. Lacrosse, another profitable sport, 175,550. Track and field, a loss, that's fairly typical, 189,000, and boys volleyball, a loss, as that's still a small sport. So all in, spring was a deficit of 302,000. That's about 200,000 worse than spring of last year, and that was mainly in the track and field area, and of course a little bit in softball due to just higher expenses, and then in track, and then the lower attendance in softball. So moving on. Our spring 2024 by district review. So again, how this slide works is each of your athletic districts and the regional or state are down the side, and then across the top are the sports. So for example, baseball in the central district, and this is the profit and loss, made 14,385. Whereas in the east, it was slightly profitable at 850. Northeast was a loss by 38,351. Northwest profitable by almost 15,000, and so on and so on. With the regional and state again bringing in a positive of 57,558. So in total, baseball made 43,023, which ties over here to this 43,023. So those numbers are in the total here, and then you can see how it breaks down by each of the districts. Softball, as I mentioned, low attendance was a deficit in all districts and at the regional and state level, so that lost money. Similar to boys tennis, fewer dollars, but again, not really a moneymaker, and you probably see that in your school sports as well. Track and field, one small bright spot was in the east where track and field was profitable. Lacrosse is held only at the regional and state level, same with boys volleyball. So all in, here's how your district perform all the way to the right-hand side. You can look up your athletic district and see how it performed for the spring. So then in total, how did the OHSAA do for the year? So our year end is July 31st. So these are the unaudited draft results as of July 31st versus our budget. If you've been to our regional meetings or been on one of these calls before, we always have this slide in any presentation that we give. Fall sports was profitable. This is net profits for fall sports, 3,907,000 versus a budget of 3 million, so better than budget. Winter sports, 1.59 or 1.6 million versus budget of 1.9, so slightly unfavorable. And then spring sports, as I mentioned, was a loss of 289,598 versus a budget of 56. So that was also below budget. In total, though, total tournament net profits was 5.2 million versus a budget of 4.98 or almost 5 million. So slightly better by 227,000, 5%. Other operating revenues, which typically things there are officiating permit license fees, people renewing their officials license. And then the second big one is corporate sponsorships. That makes those two things make up about half of this, little more than half of this dollar amount. That was favorable, mainly in the corporate sponsorship area. TPG, our partner, exceeded their guaranteed amount to us. Other expenses were 7 million versus budget of 6.9, so just slightly below budget there, and other operating expenses due to some unforeseen fees. And then total operating profit was 2.4 million versus a budget of 1.9, so better by about $500,000. After that operating profit, we distributed through the Athletic Enrichment Fund to each member high school a check for $2,000. That totaled $1.6 million. So slightly more than half of our profit we donated back to schools. Every member high school received $2,000 to your athletic department. To be used on things like officiating, equipment, fan behavior programs, transportation, things of that nature. So that was dollars sent directly back to your school. And then our investments made 862,000. So pretty good year on investments. So all in, our total profit was 1.6 versus 2 million. But again, that's because we made that distribution back to the schools. Cash on hand at the end of July, 7.7 million in operating and 9.4 in our investments, our rainy day fund, bringing us to 17.1. So about 9 months cash on hand. That would get us through one fiscal year if anything catastrophic were to happen. Much like schools, building up that rainy day fund. Now, we intend to stay at the 9 months and not continue to advance further than that. So just to recap, again, how we've invested in students and schools the last couple of years, focusing on this year, the Athletic Enrichment Fund distribution that I just mentioned, 1,632,000 given to schools, donated to schools, and travel stipends for regional and state events. Those are paid out, and team sports as a help to schools traveling to those events. That totaled 1.7 million. Student ticket prices, up until 2 years ago, we did not have a student ticket price, so we've lost revenue by having that declined price, but it's important to us to keep student ticket prices at as low as possible. And so they're $5 through at sectional district and regional levels, and then $10 at state level. Catastrophic insurance, I think you all know, we pay that on your behalf for our 28 sports. Same with greens fees, lineage fees, for tournaments, weight management fees, we pay those as well. And then last year we had the arbiter license. We don't have that any longer. And then scholarships to students. We typically give around 169,000. This year we gave $201,000 scholarships to students. That was the most we have done, I believe, ever. So in total, giving back to students and schools, 6.9 million versus last year, 5 million. I also want to draw your attention to these first two numbers here, Athletic Enrichment Fund and travel stipend. These are actual cash checks written to schools. So if you take these, add these two, that's $3.3 million in actual cash sent to schools this year, on top of just over 2 million last year. So in total, $5.3 million in the last 2 school years. The OHSAA has written checks to schools for those amounts. That leads us to just a reminder on our financial objectives. Again, this is a slide you see anytime we present. These are our 3 financial objectives here at the OHSAA. Operate at a profit, which we had 2.4 million this year versus our budget of 1.9. To build our reserve, we had 1 month hand on cash in 2021 when I started. We now have 8.9 months of cash on hand, 4 months in operating, 4.9 months in reserve. So that's our goal of 9 months cash on hand. Support students for student participation. As I mentioned, the 200 $1,000 scholarships, and then $2,000 through the athletic enrichment fund was donated to each member school this year. The other thing coming up, obviously, is the division expansion, which also gives more opportunities for students to participate in the tournament. Again, if you have any questions, you can type those in the Q&A chat now. Also, you can always send those to me, Laura Vermilya, at ohsaa.org, or to Doug Ute, our executive director. You can call or reach out to us at any time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And just making sure that there's nothing in the chat or in the Q&A at this time. I know there is a slight delay, so we'll give it a minute. All right. That concludes today's presentation. We didn't get anything in the Q&A or the chat. Like I said, this is recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel in the next 24 to 48 hours. Thanks, everyone. Have a great school year.
Laura, you still on?